Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for the key to CRM success for electrical distributors, what works, what doesn't, and how to get it right. I am joined today with Michael Corrigan and Trent Thompson, both here at Web Presented. We're going to be talking about CRM and how it applies to electrical distributors. Before I hand it off, just to let you know, this session is being recorded and you're welcome to put in questions and we'll save questions for the end. So, Michael, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, Thanks everyone for your time today. For our agenda, we'll spend these first few minutes going through introductions, a little more about who we are, both as professionals and as a company. Then we'll set the stage for the goals we're looking to set for this next 45-ish minutes that we have today. Quick housekeeping item, please submit any questions via chat. We have some time scheduled at the end for Q&A to answer those. We'll spend the first part talking through CRM challenges, specifically within electrical distribution. What we hear from folks like you, what is the foundational functionality? What does adoption look like within organizations, and how we can see a return on investment or see time to value quicker. A hot topic conversation is attracting and retaining talent. So talking about what younger generations expect, how to keep talent from leaving. Then we'll transition into real life impact of these challenges. So what does this mean organizationally? How does this impact the bottom line or monetarily? What are the risks down to an employee level? And how do we utilize technology to overcome and solve these? Which leads us into this next piece, which is going to be a short demo of WP-CRM. This will tie all of this together, showcase our approach to the electrical vertical, addressing deployment, CRM adoption, and some of the unique challenges the electrical industry faces with things like job management. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll wrap up with some Q&A, leave you with our information should you want to learn more. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I will start us off. My name is Michael Corrigan. I'm an account executive based out of the Great Pacific Northwest here in Portland, Oregon. I've been with Web Presented for just about a year. I support the electrical distribution side of our business. My background is in construction ERP software and enterprise manufacturing software technology. So I kind of have that experience up and downstream. And I've also used in my own career different CRMs, both good and bad. So I have a unique perspective from that experience I have within those. Finally, on a personal level, over here on the right, I'm an avid sports fan, especially the Portland Trail Blazers, although it's been a rough couple of years recently, but also love to get outside. It's really impossible to beat the summers here in the Northwest, so love to water ski. Picture here with Mount St. Helens in the background. So excited for when it warms up here, hopefully soon.
Excellent, Michael. Well, I see one thing I've got to make note of. I see we have the same stylist for our webinar today, so I'm glad that our stylist picked out
Yeah.
our outfits here today for us. My name is Trent Thompson. I'm the VP of Sales here at Web Presented, based in Northwest Ohio, just outside of Toledo. I've been with the company for 5 years now. Actually, it's 5 years this week. Started the week before, something called COVID, which was a fun time to jump into the business. But I've spent the last 10 years working with hundreds, if not thousands, of distributors, having come over from a competitive solution. So serving the distribution market, serving electrical distributors on multiple ERP platforms for the past 10 years. Much like Michael commented on, I've also used a lot of CRMs over my career. So my time before serving distribution, I spent 15 years in banking. I was an individual producer, former sales manager in the banking space, and used a lot of different platforms, over the last 25 years. To Michael's point, some good, some bad. And some of the topics we'll get into today, we've had some firsthand experience with not only working with electrical distributors, but also just personally, right? And how do you manage data and make the most out of customer interactions through data and through CRM, which is what we want to take you through today. My picture on the right, it's fun here that I'm on the sidelines as Michael's actually doing the activity. So that may say a little bit more about where I'm at in life. As my water skiing days, no, they're not over, but they're a little bit more limited. I do like to show this, this picture of coaching, and it really goes in, and we'll talk about some of the fundamental blocking and tackling of sales process and management and distribution, specifically the electrical space. And to me, that's what, it ties right back into coaching youth sports, in this case, youth lacrosse, because youth sports are all about the fundamentals, right? And really uh, teaching and honing in on that skill set so it becomes more repetitive, so that you see the outcomes you're looking to drive, not only in current performance, but for future performance. So we look forward to going through through the content today and talking about fundamentals and what else you should be looking at within your tech stack to drive organizational value. Uh, so that's a little bit about Michael and I, and we certainly appreciate you joining. And for those on the call who maybe aren't familiar with Web Presented, I'll spend just a few moments here talking about who we are as a company. Our company has been around for about 24 years. Our founders came out of the distribution ERP space, originally doing some consulting work. They were building web applications, and oddly enough, with some of the topics we're going to talk about today, they were connecting a specific ERP platform to CRM systems like Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics for distributors. And years of doing that, a common theme kept coming back, and that was this system just wasn't built for our industry, right? It lacked some of the knowledge. There's a lot of customization work, and we're struggling with adoption because of that. And so in 2012, our founders launched what is called WP-CRM, so Web Presented CRM, and we took that to market. We are one of the leading CRM solutions for wholesale industrial distributors. We focus on enabling sellers, right? Providing them with the tools, providing organizations with a foundational part of the tech stack to really drive value into the sales organization, right? And simplify experiences, improve customer interactions, make more money. And those are the topics we're going to get into a little bit more today. We are trusted by many distributors for their CRM needs, their sales enablement needs. A few electrical logos over here on the right-hand side that just supports what we're doing within your space, and folks that we're looking like that, or that we're talking to and we work with that look a lot like you. So that's about who we are. We're based out of Columbus, Ohio, and it's a great organization, great culture, and we have great partners that we get to work with on a daily basis. So with that, Mike, why don't we just jump right in and start talking about the challenges? I mean, you hate to start there, but it's a reality of let's kind of put the groundwork in for what we hear.
Yeah, thanks, Trent. So, like you said, we're going to spend a couple minutes here discussing specific challenges electrical distributors face. Some of these are going to be across the industry as a whole, whereas others are going to be more specific to the electrical space here. So, first off, we have siloed data. This is something we see all the time. It's a really big challenge for most. And having data in different systems or a lack of integration to the ERP. So things like access to real-time pricing, account data, this can create a really big disconnect and lead to conflicting data. So you might have different systems that have different amounts reflected within those. This also can cause double entry, which is an administrative burden. We also find a lot of folks we work with have a CRM that isn't built for the industry. And this showcases kind of the lack of understanding of how distribution businesses really run. So things like job bid opportunities. This is something we see the most in the electrical space, and not having a one-to-one opportunity relationship that will ultimately overinflate a pipeline within the system. We also see national bill to and ship to accounts. So really designating that parent-child relationship to reflect those properly. Flexible opportunity management to support different sales cycles. This can be a marketing lead cycle versus a large project opportunity cycle. Those are going to have vastly different stages, vastly different number of days within stages within the pipeline. So being able to support both those at the same time. Product manager rules. So many distributors have product specialists who own a line of products versus a more traditional territory that's going to be a patch of dirt. So we see CRM struggle to support this concept with possible overlap with outside sales reps, or might be unable to give a clear view of who owns what within the system. Vendor or supplier management. So being able to properly track and reflect those relationships in the system. And then we also come across projects that are more IT led. So they're not getting input from a sales or marketing organization. This can lead to failed implementations. It contributes to low adoption rates because sales isn't, being the primary end user, isn't really involved in or contributing to this project evaluation. Quote visibility and conversion is also another big one, or not having standard operating procedures. This is an area we see often instant value from not only having access to to what is being quoted within the system, but following up in order to get those to convert. How do we stay on top of them? Focus on the ones that we know we have a high conversion rate with, so we're able to bring in the business more efficiently. And then finally, just not having a CRM in place. And this is one that we see all the time. There's a bit of a stigma around CRM, especially in older generations, it being kind of a big brother. But in reality, it's not having data, not having good data, and not having tools in place to hire top talent from a generation that frankly expects to leverage a CRM to do their jobs efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, Michael, great points. And I know we're going to talk about some of the resolutions to this, right? And that's part of what we want to get across today and how to solve. And a few specific areas here when we go into the product demonstration. It's not a full demo, right? But we want to talk about a few areas specifically. So we will dive deeper into, job bid work, right? Whether, you're talking about commercial, industrial, or, resi jobs. So we'll dive a little bit further into that. It also ties in the multiple sales cycles that Michael's referenced here, as well as the product manager rules. So those are a few things that we'll get into when we talk, through the demonstration and show you a little bit of product today. One area that I do want to just dive a little bit deeper into, and that's the sideload data, because this is something, and talk a lot about this in different industry association events, ERP user group conferences where we're doing, user sessions. Is talking about what's that experience, right? When you have disparate data, you have lack of integration, you've got that sideload data sitting in all these different third-party systems. What's it mean to the seller, right? And that's the question I think that you really got to ask yourself is, how's that seller really armed with the information they need to be most impactful in their customer interactions? And so I like to go through this example. I know we've just got some text here, right? But we're going to kind of walk through this. You think about, I'm a seller, I'm walking in, I'm going to visit a customer. And we think about all this data that can exist around the customer relationship. So I've certainly got my ERP, whether you're on most often in the electrical space, we're seeing Epicor Eclipse, maybe Infor CSD or Infor SX.E, a little bit of Profit 21. But depending on the ERP you're on, the seller is interested in what open orders do I have with this customer? What open quotes, right? What quotes do we have outstanding? They haven't turned the orders. It's some potential low-hanging fruit. Transactional data, what's the trends for this customer? What are they buying? What did they buy from me last year? They're not buying from me this year. Michael referenced this earlier in talking about lack of real-time pricing or product availability. It's a common question that a customer might ask, right? Hey, I'm interested in this. What do you have? What's the price on it? That's just ERP data, right? And not having direct access to it can lead to challenges in that customer interaction. Then you think about the storefront. How's that customer interacting with your storefront? What's their percentage of web sales? What products have they been searching? Do they have abandoned carts? I mean, these are more data points. Marketing. In the previous slide, Michael mentioned a bit of some disparate data between sales and marketing because sellers aren't usually users on the marketing platform. Whether you're using an email marketing tool like a MailChimp or a marketing automation platform like Acton or Dot Digital, they're not users. And there's a lot of really fruitful information within those platforms to understand how customers are engaging with content. Phone systems, call logs, obviously CRM, right? What did I talk about last time I was there? What opportunities in the pipeline? There's industry published data that's out there. You might have systems tracking CSAT or NPS scores. And then you've got lead solutions, right? Where leads may be coming from your manufacturer suppliers. Maybe you're pulling leads in for marketing from Dun & Bradstreet. So we think about this is all this data that this seller in the field is trying to consume. And maybe they're not thinking even about all of these data points, but this is all information that moves the needle forward, right? I go in as a more impactful seller. I do less product selling and more solution solving, and I become a true partner to that customer and really value their time. So when we talk about sideload data, that's the impact, right? And if I'm trying to collect this, I may make, Michael, what? I may make 3-4 different phone calls. I may send an email. I may send a
Yeah.
Teams message. That takes time. It takes time, and I may not get a response. So having that information at your fingertips, and we'll give a visualization around our approach later that Michael will talk through. It's how do we pull that data together again to make the seller very informed on that customer when they walk in the door. So just wanted to go through that really quick as we just talk about, and I'm going to talk about more impacts now, but that's certainly a big one. That's certainly a big one from the seller's lens. Organizationally, we talk about impacts with electrical distributors around organizational impacts and monetary. Michael referenced what's the top line or bottom line impact, right? And so when we think about the impact of the challenges that Michael just discussed, we get into organizationally things like inconsistency in process. We hear this a lot, right? I've got 50 sellers and we're doing things maybe 20 or 30 different ways. We may be putting quotes out. We've got quotes going on PDF. I got someone doing a Word of just an email template. Maybe it's back of the napkin, right? Hey, here's a price for that item. Anywhere inconsistency in process can lead to brand disengagement, right? It's lack of, you might have a little bit of lack of commitment of how things move through a sales funnel. So having that really honed in can help you avoid some of the negative impacts that can cause. Big one, lack of control of institutional data. And, I'm going to talk here in a few moments about talent, but getting that institutional data into a CRM platform is extremely important organizationally. You own it, right? And institutional data could be contacts, your contact management. It could be activity history, key information about buyers, right? That information that might be stored in someone's Outlook, their Outlook contacts might be sitting in a manila folder. It's somewhere other than a system where it can be utilized and captured for future use. And Michael and I were both at the NAED Eastern meetings. A couple of weeks ago, Michael, in Tampa.
Yeah. Yep.
And one of the things that really popped up to me that I made a note of, Wes Smith kicked us off one of the mornings. Talking about, hey, we've got 10,000 people leaving the industry. That's a lot of institutional data, right? And this is a distribution challenge, but certainly electrical is going to feel it. That institutional knowledge leaves, it's tremendous. So for folks who maybe aren't doing a great job of capturing this, or if you don't have a CRM in place today, this is a big one. Organization, this is a really, really big one. There's a little story I've got here. I'm sorry if I'm taking a lot of time around this bullet point, but it's so important. I worked a number of years ago with a sales leader in the distribution space, and he had 3 reps leave in a very short period of time. And that it cost him a lot of pain. Outside of the reps leaving, that institutional knowledge left because they didn't have it in a CRM tool. And he was running around ragged trying to find out who are our key contacts, what have we engaged in, what are the key goals that we're partnering with these customers on. And it was all information that he knew, that the sellers knew, but he couldn't reflect back on it to really action it. So having this data is extremely important. The last one on organizational is get into inefficiencies and how that can just lead to employee frustration, which can lead to a lack of sentiment with the company, right? And so we already have people leaving the industry through just aging out through retirement, right? We don't necessarily want frustration to be another reason to leave the company, go to competitor. So really engaging and making sure that we have efficient processes in place. We have the right information to really support the seller and give them the tools that they need. Now, the other side of that is monetary impact. And a couple key ones here. Michael referenced some of this with inaccurate forecasting, and we'll talk about this with some of the opportunity management. Inaccurate forecasting is huge, right? What are we forecasting in the business? What's the next quarter look like? What's the next 30, 60 days? How are we reporting forecasting back to our suppliers and what we're selling of their product? Extremely important when you start to look ahead as opposed to just rear view mirror transactional data. And then it's the loss of revenue from, loss of revenue generating opportunities. There's a lot of low hanging fruit. Organizationally, the monitoring impact could be from a managed account, a managed customer, but it could also be from house accounts. It's not uncommon to talk to distributors who have, 1,000+ house accounts. And what's going on with those? What are the trends? What of those house accounts should be managed, and where are the opportunities? Where's the low-hanging fruit there? So big impact when we start talking about top-line revenue, and and some of these challenges, how they can impact that performance. When we cross these over, we look at a couple of key areas, and low user adoption is certainly one of them. And low user adoption with technology, specifically, we're talking about CRM. But if you don't have systems really supporting connected data, supporting efficiency and process, the correct nomenclature within the organization, that can drive low user adoption, which impacts revenue opportunities. Employee retention, and talking about this talent pool. Again, 10,000 people leaving. I think Wes said there was 7,000 available, and you're competing against other industries. So the impact here of not having the right technology stack to attract the new seller, right? The new sellers are coming in, they're looking for technology, and they're looking for modern day apps to support their responsibilities, right? To support their journey within the organization. So that's certainly one of them, is attracting. It's then retaining, and it's also ramping. Yeah, so not too long ago, I was talking to distributors about, and we were in a classroom, and I asked, hey, how long does it take to ramp a new salesperson? And the average was between 12 and 18 months. And so huge impact when you think about not having the right tools and prolonging that onboarding process. And I know that electrical distributor, there's a lot of nuances, a lot of technical responsibility, technical knowledge that needs to be someone needs to be educated on. So it is a longer ramp, but technology can shorten that way down, and that's how you should be really evaluating your tech stack. So huge impacts organizationally, monetarily, and then certainly as we look at the employee and both the attraction and retaining of good talent. So the resolution, and again, we're going to do a little short demo to talk through some of this. When we talk about the challenge of siloed data, how do we want to resolve that? And Michael, I'm going to hand to you. I'm going to go one slide ahead, and then we'll come back.
Sure.
But to talk about our approach here with what we consider the hub and spoke model.
Yeah, and I really love this illustration, Trent, because it shows how we see CRM fit into the ecosystem, the technology stack that many distributors already have in place, and then utilizing data integration, bi-directional connections, and Trent did touch on some of these earlier, but how is it all wrapped together, right? So this is going to start with Exchange, Outlook, Gmail, so logging those emails automatically or through an add-in and kicking off actions from that email, things like creating a quote, building an opportunity. You can do that all right from within your Outlook inbox. We have e-commerce, so systems like Aldrich, Magento, BillTrust, capturing abandoned cart data, logins, searches, and then taking that and creating workflows for reps to follow up on within the CRM. We also have business intelligence, so the Power BIs of the world, so utilizing any unique reporting that you already have in place today. ERP systems, we discussed this, so Infor CSD, Epicor Eclipse, P21. Really the most important connection and foundation for these bidirectional syncs, so things around orders, pricing, quotes. Marketing automation, so HubSpot, Digital, Acton, even MailChimp, like Trent mentioned. So utilizing these best-in-class marketing platforms to capture the entire process from lead to opportunity, eventually to customer. Phone systems like RingCentral, 8x8 Teams, so having the ability to auto log calls, really take the administrative task off of your sales team. And then for the inside team, things like screen pops, so you have access to critical account information when the moment a call comes into an office. And then finally, Google Map integration. So for outside reps on the road, having some spare time in territory, they might have just completed an appointment, being able to not only see customers in the area, but also get directions to those so they can efficiently serve their territory. So again, leveraging all these different systems to create one cohesive sales force, as Trent pointed out, getting your reps informed so they can do their job more effectively. One final note here, this isn't required on day one. This is really showcasing the realm of possibility and more illustrating how we can continue to scale as you adopt more and more technology.
Yeah, that's a great point, Michael. It's kind of hard to drink from the fire hose and do it all at once.
Yeah.
So as you look at your CRM journey, thinking about, and I think that's important when you start to look at, for the folks on the call, if you're looking at CRM changes, CRM for the first time, what's the scalability here with my partner, right? Can I extend this platform so this is my platform of choice for the next 5 to 10 plus years, right? Those are the type of relationships certainly we're looking for. And it's meaningful when you think about the impact of change and trying to change CRMs over and over again, because you just don't have a partner that can scale with you. So great points here, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to go back here and talk about a few others, and again, we're going to support some of this too with the demonstration. That CRM, Michael mentioned CRM not tailored for the industry, and finding a partner, who knows you, and that is, we believe, certainly critical. Now we're biased, right? Because we are a CRM solution that it's very specific to distribution. It's all we do. And we only serve distributors and quite a few electrical. But that's important, right? And I think it's important for two reasons. Number one, it's a platform that's out of the box, pretty much there, right? When we're talking to prospective customers, we're often talking about, hey, when you start to implement WP CRM, you're 85% to 90% of the way there. And the last 10% is just some configuration stuff to make it yours, right? And how's the system a little bit different for Agilix than it is for Shaler Yesco? The other is voice of the distributor and voice of our customer. So a partner that knows you is also going to look to the distribution community to shape the product roadmap. And I think that's really important, right? And we're not going to sit here and say that other horizontal platforms in the market aren't good tools, because they are. And some CRM is better than no CRM. But if I've got to take something that's 40% of the way there and build the other 60%, it takes a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of energy. And the product direction, isn't necessarily tailored for my specific needs. So I think that's really important when you think about current state and also where's my desired state in the future. Michael talked about IT-led projects, and I want to make sure, because we could have some IT folks on the call or reviewing this webinar in the future. This is not to say that IT is not important, because they are, right? We just talked about a visual of tech stack integration, and so IT is key to that. But when we talk about this specifically, we're talking about a sales-led deployment, right? So you need IT's buy-in, you need IT's assistance in getting the system deployed, but sales needs to be the leader of a CRM deployment. And sometimes we don't find that to be the case, where it's an IT project, and sellers just frankly don't get as engaged if it's IT saying, hey, this is what we're doing, as opposed to sales leadership saying this is what we're doing. So looking for that adoption, that buy-in, it really needs to come from a top-down approach within the sales organization to drive a really effective go live and successful CRM journey. The quoting SOPs are standard operating procedures. And Michael mentioned this is a quick, easy win, right? We find that 2%, 3%, 4% quote conversion is not a hard task, not a hard accomplishment, but it all comes down to a resolution of data visibility and what we believe through workflow tools. And when I talk about workflow tools, it's how do we automate actions, right? Because not that you couldn't get a report, send an alert out in the morning to tell sellers, hey, here's what's quoted within your territory, but how do we action it, right? How do we provide a CRM action around it so that we've got an ensured follow-up? Or how do we use workflow management to communicate to the customer, communicate externally on behalf of the seller? Maybe how do we link it to opportunities? So high value quotes that should be an opportunity, how do we put that in the pipeline, have visibility and understand, conversion? All really important through workflow management to support not only the visibility, but the actions of taking it from a quote to cash. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to get to, right? And distribution is challenged with this, and electrical distributors are challenged with this because of the volume of quotes that are going out. We'll talk about job management. I was talking to a distributor just yesterday, and they're working 500 jobs on average a month. That's a lot of bids that are going out. And what's 2% more of that mean? You win 2% more. What's the impact on that? So it's extremely important when we talk about resolution around quoting SOPs. And then no tool for the modern seller. That's a challenge we talked about, having no CRM in place. Also about attracting and retaining talent, top talent. So looking at and finding a resolution where you're finding a modern app, a system initiated prompts, right? It's not just, hey, you got to go hunt and find this, but is the system telling me where I should direct my efforts, right? And getting away from the, hey, Michael, you go, this is your route on Monday, this is your route Tuesday, your route Thursday, your route Friday, to, hey, here's system prompted information that tells me where I should be directing my efforts, and then using things like Google Maps, to Michael's point, to then fill in some of those gaps, and using sales data to help support where the right discussions should happen. So those are some of the resolutions we certainly believe to be true. And now we're going to get into just a short demo. Certainly not a full demo. We don't have enough time for that. So we're going to focus on a few areas here. So I'm going to come out of PowerPoint mode really quick and go over to Google Chrome and talk through a few things in WP-CRM. So this is our browser application. I'm also going to pull up my mobile app. We wanted just a quick review of mobile and sales prompts. But a few things I wanted to focus on within the browser application is Mission Central, analytics, and then opportunity management. And so Mission Central for us, this is our dashboarding, the dashboarding elements of our platform. And it's page one, it's the homepage, right? So when I come into the platform, I'm coming in and getting information that's important to me, right? As a seller, as a sales manager, as an executive, as an inside sales rep, what's the information going on right now within my area of responsibility that I need to be aware of? And this can also get into the low-hanging fruit, right? So our mission here, pun intended, of Mission Central, is to put in front of the seller what's that low-hanging fruit. So things from, and also understanding how I'm performing, right? So performance to plan metrics, how am I doing against my targets? What's my actuals? Where do I have gaps? I can see some red here. So I've got a gap in my consumables business. What do I need to close off, and where are the opportunities so I can close these gaps? Daily visibility that allows me to course correct. But then we get into opportunity management, right? What's key in the pipeline? What's closing soon? What are the open quotes within my territory that I need to action? I talked about quoting and workflow management, but this is also important when you think about inside sales, and most distributors we talk to, inside sales or a quotations team, are moving quotes out to customer via the ERP. And in those cases, sales reps may have no idea what's going out. So providing visibility to that and being able to come in and look at where those high value quotes are at that I can move to a cash event, extremely important. Customers we haven't been in front of in a while, even looking at maybe sales performance. And so I can pull those together to see, who are the customers who maybe sales are down, sales are low, and I haven't been out to see them in 6 months, a year, whatever it might be, right? Depending on the size of territory. So here are customers that you should be in front of. Getting prompted on order stoppage. And that's what this widget's built for, is to tell, in this case, this user is Vic Aldrich. It's to tell Vic, hey, here are the accounts in your territory who have stopped ordering. Yeah, and you can determine what that should look like, right? Is stop ordering a week? Is it a month? Is it 60 days? But it's pushing information out to the rep to say, these are customers where there's order stoppage. Something has changed that's not typical of their buying behaviors. the buying behavior from this customer. That's low-hanging fruit, right? And again, this is going into where this may drive my afternoon. It may drive a day later in the week, or I may start planning for this territory next week. And then I kind of work through that to see who else is in the area that's got similar patterns. So that's the purpose of that. We do things like customer scorecard. We're measuring data points, looking at sales velocity, sales performance, 12-month period over 12-month period, with sales velocity, which is the near-term trend. So we're pulling those two things together. So in a situation like In Your Face Apparel here, whose sales score, their 12-month period is higher, right? They're up, which for a lot of sellers, green is good and I can move on. But when we look at near-term trends, we're seeing some defection. We can catch that before it's too late. We can, then also aggregate in data around order history. What's their typical order frequency? And are they outside of that typical frequency? Are they due for a reorder? So those are some of the data points that we look at, we think are important at WP-CRM to push out to the seller to enable them to find that low-hanging fruit, those revenue opportunities, to help them do their job more effectively and make more money and impact the monetary side of the organization. So again, just a little bit about Mission Central. Won't go into depth on other areas. We'll have contact us at the end. We would love to engage. Michael would love to have a conversation with you. So if you want to see more about Mission Central, we can sort of go through that. I want to go over the analytics because one of the areas that Michael talked about was product manager roles and product specialists. And this is an area where CRM platforms, especially some horizontal platforms that are out there, struggle with the concept, right? Understand a patch of dirt, understand that a customer ID might roll to a sales rep ID. But what about when we have someone who just owns a product line or a couple of product lines? And how do we differentiate that data so they're seeing what's going on within their area of responsibility? And we do that through admin tools, but it could look something like this, right? If I own, and this is our demo environment, so this isn't necessarily your product groupings, right? But if I own the video or if I own datacom, right? What's going on within that area of my responsibility? How am I performing? What's up? What's down? What are the product categories or item classes that support that product line? What are my SKU performances? Where am I up? Where am I down? What customers are buying from me? Right? So who's buying this? Again, where are we seeing positive impact? Where's their opportunity to claw business back? And I could drill into a customer and see specifically what are they ordering? What vendors or suppliers are we selling? What's my order history? So I have access to information. Not only I can do this as a seller looking at my customers, my bill to, ship to relationships, national accounts. I could look at this as a branch manager. I could look at this as a regional sales VP or as an executive leader, but I can also look at this as a product manager responsible for a line. So something that's we do that not all CRMs can provide that level of insight. The last thing I would touch on here before we just do a quick view of our mobile is opportunity management. And this is something that makes WP-CRM very unique. And I'm going to really just focus on a couple key areas here. And it's going to go back to the challenges that Michael talked about, right? And one of the first things that Michael said when he was talking about challenges was unique sales cycles and not having CRM that's supporting the electrical space and those unique selling rhythms. And so what I mean by that is most CRMs are say, hey, here's your opportunity management, your sales stages, put your opportunities in, let's roll. That's great, right? We've got the visualization of pipeline. I can go over and look at my visualization of forecast by month. But what we do, it's a little bit different because we understand as an electrical distributor, I may have a high value quote. Maybe I consider that anything $10,000 or greater. Well, that could convert to an order today or tomorrow. I want visibility to it. I want to understand conversion, but I also need to, so I want to see it in pipeline, but that's not the same as a public bid job that's going out, right? I'm bidding on a university project or a new skyscraper. And those processes are very different. Michael talked about, net new customers, leads. That's a different process, right? Taking somebody who's net new and raw lead to customer is very different than a job or just a quote. You've got different conversion rates. different people are involved, and they have different sales cycles and time to close. So we have this functionality. This drop down here is what we call opportunity categories. And you can have as many or as few as you need to support your business, but it's having that flexibility, the system to adapt to how you manage your business, which is what is really important from your CRM partner, to adapt to you as opposed to you having to adapt to the platform. So if I'm in the sales opportunity here, which was maybe my quota business, if I come over to some commercial bid work, now I'm going to see my project bid board. What are the jobs that we have outstanding? I've got, this apartment complex. I got a hotel we're bidding on. I've got a University of Toledo dorm expansion. You may have an ERP module that supports like Eclipse, right? Supporting and having a job management module. What we do is we can pull that data in from job management, or if you don't have ERP support, then you can manage that within WP-CRM. But as to bring that in, so we're really closing the gaps. And the gaps are, we get this out the bid, right? And when we get awarded, that's all great. But what happens in between? What are all the actions that have to take place? What are the interactions with customers, contractors that has to take place? Rebids, right? All this stuff that occurs that takes us from a bid to close. And so we can manage that. You see the sales stages change when I went over to this commercial bid. So it's a different process and different conversion. Now, within this sales cycle, one of the things that's really unique to our platform is the concept of many to one. And earlier, Michael said CRMs have one-to-one relationships, right? It's a parent-child record. I've got an opportunity. I've got a customer, and they're related to each other. And he talked about inflating your pipeline, which is a forecast challenge, which we talked about as impact. And that's exactly what we're solving here, right? So we've got $1 million bid on this job. And in this case, I've got 5 contractors that I'm working with, right? And so in every CRM I've ever seen, they would have you create 5 different opportunities, each at $1 million to support this. Well, now all of a sudden, my pipeline is showing $5 million when it should only be 1. I can't win this job 5 times. They're only doing it once. And only, likely one contractor is going to win, or we could get even more complex here. If I want to break out my lighting and gear versus some other stuff, I can look and separate that out to see, even kind of a sub forecast within the opportunity of where we're winning and where we're losing. What becomes really important here outside of the forecasting and having this all into one record is also the ability to look at data supporting, if I just come in and I'm going to say Transcend Technologies, our awarded contractor here, is getting the conversion data at a contractor level. Who are the contractors we're outbidding all the time and we never win with, or we've got very low conversion rates with? Maybe we should stop bidding that, right? It takes a lot of work. Maybe we should stop bidding those contractors. Maybe we need to improve that relationship. And then who do I win with often? Or maybe, if I'm putting in who the awarded bidder was, and I didn't even have a bid out, right? Or the awarded contractor. So you can start to pull that data from your CRM. That's what you should be using it for, to pull that data out to create a greater impact on your job work and improve relationships, go after the right contractors, and win more business. And again, 2% more, huge impact. So those are a couple of really key things when we look at opportunity management. The difference between the categories and being able to flex based on the sales cycle, and then also that multi-contractor work and having a many to one. So those are a few things I wanted to show from our demo environment. Michael, any commentary there to do a good enough job of kind of going through those areas?
Yeah, no, great job showing this. I think, like you mentioned, it's really important to see not only the wins, but also the losses, and how do we capture that?
Yeah, excellent. So just real quick, I'm going to go into our mobile app. So I'm going to mirror my phone really fast because I know we're getting close in time. I want to make sure we get some questions answered. So this is our mobile app. It's a native app available on Android or iOS. And I really want to point out 2 quick things. And again, if you were looking for more information, we talked about a modern app for the modern seller. We'd be happy to go through a little more detail on not only the browser application, but also the mobile app. One is just kind of looking, if I go and I'm meeting with an account, meeting with a customer, is having direct access to those sales opportunities, right? What jobs am I bidding with this contractor? If my quotations team put the bid out, making sure that I'm aware of it so I can continue to move this thing towards an awarded status in our favor, right? So direct visibility of that at the account level. The other is the sales prompts, right? We talked about that as far as a resolution to the challenge of disparate data and value to the salesperson. And we do that through what we call Playmaker. And so if I click on Playmaker, Playmaker is going to, it's my right along sales assistant to say, hey, here's the low-hanging fruit in your territory. These are meaningful actions, meaningful opportunities that you could engage in right now based on what the data is telling us. And then it's also some AI modeling. So in this case, I'll just show you a few. We've got American Roadway Systems, order overdue by 45 days. So this customer typically orders every 12. It's been 45 since we should have seen a reorder. They're outside of their normal routines, right? This is a task I could take on. I'm maybe going to queue it up. Maybe I'm sitting in the parking lot. I don't have time to action it right this moment. I've got Cubic Systems, and I've got a product suggestion. They're not buying TextMist from us. So based on their spend, system, WP-CRM is telling me, hey, you should be pitching TextMist to this customer. Again, maybe I could come through here. My team's message is popping up. I thought it would go to a do not disturb, but clearly that did not happen. I apologize for that. I could queue this up. I could reject it. Maybe in this case, I'm saying, hey, I've talked to them about this product. I'm going to go ahead and reject that out. Hanover Electricals, I've got product category sales. This is where we're looking at upsell opportunity. So where the TextMist product is looking at cross-sell, this is where we're looking at where's the upsell opportunity? Where could we get more wallet share? And so this is telling me within the processors category, this customer is buying 0%, but a typical customer has 16% spend in this category. WP-CRM believes there's a 1 to 16% uplift, upsell opportunity within this category, revenue generating opportunities. I'm gonna queue that up. The last one I'll share, this is a quote. We talked about, how do we put action around a quote to drive it to an order? So this is a quote that was sent to Cure Wholesale 82 days ago, giving me the quote number from the ERP. And in this case, it's going to draft, the system will draft an email on my behalf. We've got a 68% win rate with this customer. It's a $33,000 quote, a lot of opportunity here. If I take this and I swipe up and I start it, we're going to work with OpenAI here to generate the response on behalf of the seller, right? So this is going into that conversation around efficiencies, modern technology, efficiencies. Let technology take advantage of the technology to help the seller and save the seller time. I can come through, I could review this, make a couple comments. I can hit send, push it right out from Office 365 or Gmail, and on I go, right? I'm communicating, I'm looking at moving this quote closer to an order. So when we talk about sales prompts, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about to engage the seller with, to promote the data as opposed to hunting for the data. With that, I know we've got just a few minutes remaining, and I'll come back in. Oh, I should have gone to my current slide, Julie. I'll come in. I'll get our contact us information up. So we mentioned earlier, would love to go through a discussion with you individually to talk about what's going on with your organization, talk about how we can add value. So please reach out to Michael and/or myself. And with that, Julie, I think we'll open it up to any questions that we've got.
Yes, we did receive a couple of questions. The first one is, how can we tell if our CRM is actually driving sales beyond just tracking activities?
Yeah, Michael, I'll take that one. It's a great question. And activity management is important, right? We didn't talk much about that today. It is some of the fundamental blocking and tackling of the type of activities. We talk more about the value of the data because that usually it's the activity management that gets sellers a little bit ruffled with CRM. But I would look first at conversion rates. And we talked a lot about that through our time today. I think that's probably the thing I would look at for success with CRM is how have we improved conversion? Conversion on quotes, on jobs, specifically with contractors, right? Did I gain that extra 2, 3, 4%? We look at increased revenue by rep, right? So before we had CRM and after we had CRM, what are we seeing in differences in average increased revenue by rep? One other key one I would mention, and this is, we've got a quoting module within our platform where we can be the quote interface instead of your ERP. And we talk to customers about how do we increase your average quote value. So, we talked about product suggestions and how we can work product suggestions into a quote so we can increase the average value of a quote. So there's certainly many others, time efficiencies, how many customers did, maybe, looking at churn, but I would really focus on conversion, increased sales by rep, and average quote value.
Awesome.
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Our next question is, our ERP contains a ton of valuable data, but it doesn't always translate into something useful for sales. What's the best way to leverage that data in CRM?
Yeah. Now, Michael, I'm just kind of jumping in here with this one too. And I think just because I talked through some of this with the demo, right? I think,
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's, you're looking at those system props. And I think what's really important here, because there is a lot of data. We talked about that going and looking at the seller's lens, right? I think the most important thing is how do we make it easy to consume, and how does one engage with that data? But I think order stoppage is extremely important. How are we seeing order trends, the open quotes, the performance, the plans, indicators on negative trends, right? So where are we up, where are we down? That's all information certainly that's within the ERP. It's data that you might have you would likely have inside of a BI tool. This is kind of the next step, and I know this isn't part of the question, but it's the actionable side of it, right? And that's what makes our tool different. If we give you and show you trends on order stoppage, customer related or by SKU, I can action it. I can turn it into a task, an appointment, if I have, or even an opportunity. So those are things where you can take the data, present it in an easy way to consume, system prompt it, but then also tie CRM to it, ideally through a workflow management, so that I've got action. Otherwise, it's just data.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Any
I
others?
think we have one more. Yes, just one more. We've tried CRM before, but sales reps struggled to keep up with data entry. What are ways to make CRM easier for them to use daily?
Sure, I can take this one.
Sure.
This one I think this one excites me, coming from previous roles with Salesforce and Dynamics, but it's a great question. And let's be honest, I'm a sales rep, so I don't like data entry. I report up to Trent. So there's a number of ways we can go about this within the system. If you recall the hub and spoke that I showed earlier, we can capture things like phone calls that are automatically logged in the system. We can utilize workflows. So at the close of an appointment, say there's a follow-up, call back 30 days, 60 days, whatever it might be, the system does the work, creates the task for you, and then with a minimal number of clicks, your activity is logged and your follow-up's already set. So the possibilities are really endless with workflows. And so when you come in each day, you already have your list of tasks that you need to get done. You let the system do the work of logging the actions you're already doing. And then you just use those tasks to prioritize your day. And then as Trent showed just a second ago with AI, you can even use that to leverage to build the content that you're sending out to customers. So a lot of different ways to accomplish this. And like I said, coming from other systems, this was something that I really was impressed with WP-CRM.
Yeah, we are. Michael mentioned some data entry. We use our own platform, right?
Yeah.
So we do use our own tool, and data entry is a component of CRM, but it's how can you use the system to automate as much of that as possible to take some of that lift off of the seller.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is the last question that we had. Any final thoughts, you guys?
Yeah, just greatly appreciate everyone's time. And I think it's an important, it's always an important time, I think, to look at your technology stack. But the last comment I would personally make, is we talk about attracting talent. I think this is just so extremely important. Julie, I'm gonna make one more comment from the NAED Eastern meeting, because we had the privilege of listening to Cal Ripken Jr., which was just really cool. And one of the things he said was, and I'm going to read this. He said, it's not about. He was talking about engaging some other players and how he was a leader, and it's not necessarily this is how you should do it, but it's here are some different ideas to support how you already do it. And I think that's one of the things we look at from a CRM standpoint. Distributors are doing some really great things. So it's how do we use technology to support the things they're already doing to be more effective, more efficient, drive even higher level of customer engagements and more revenue opportunities. So that's kind of what I would leave with.
That
just
great.
echoing Trent's comments. Don't have a quote lined up, but appreciate the opportunity to present today. And like Trent mentioned, if you want to learn more, I'd be happy to set something up with you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for everybody that attended. We'll be sending out the recording by tomorrow. So look for it in your email.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.